In a twisting turn of events, a once loving son and bright young boy makes everyone second guess themselves. Is the pressure of adulthood too much to handle, or are there bigger issues lying under the surface? Welcome back to another episode of Ripshide Crime. Today's case is grueling and an intimate dive into the human mind, but also one with a life-saving twist that saves dozens of lives. This is the case of Trey Sesler, a YouTuber and anime fanatic. When no one was expecting it, he changed his family forever with actions that couldn't be undone. Trey Sesler was born on August 3, 1989 in Houston, Texas, to Lawton and Ronna Sesler. The Sesler family was known to be a hardworking middle-class unit, living a life that seemed ideal. Trey's parents were dedicated to their work lives and family, with Lawton being a 5th grade teacher at a local elementary school, and Ronna working as a journalist for a local newspaper. They were a loving and nurturing couple who did their best to give their kids the best lives they could. As a child, Trey's family was close-knit, and he spent most of his time with his parents and older brother Mark. In his early years, Trey attended public schools in Texas, where he displayed a natural childlike curiosity, and most of his early teachers found him to be a great student. He excelled academically, standing out amongst his peers due to his keen interest in daily school activities. His teachers noted his creativity and penchant for storytelling, which hinted at a potential future as a writer or an artist. But little did they know, this is exactly what Trey would lean towards as he grew up. After Trey graduated from high school, he faced a common challenge shared by many young adults: the transition into the world of adult employment and independence. However, the job market proved to be quite a hurdle for him, and Trey found himself dealing with the harsh reality of the limited opportunities as a young adult with bigger ambitions. Despite his determination, securing a job that would enable him to move out of his parents' home remained as an elusive goal. He did get one part-time job after graduating, and this was as a pizza delivery driver. But to Trey, it just wasn't enough. As with most adults his age, the frustration of unemployment took its toll on Trey. He grappled with feelings of inadequacy and uncertainty about his future, unsure if he would ever amount to what he wanted to be. The aspirations he grew up with seemed distant, and he was feeling frustrated and stunned at home. These challenging circumstances left him feeling lost and disconnected from the world around him, which forced him to seek out other means of income. Despite his struggles in the job market, Trey had a dual life that unfolded in the digital realm. Under the name LensCap Productions, he began to carve out a place for himself on YouTube, also known as Mr. Anime. His channel initially focused on reviewing anime and expressing his passion for films, garnering attention from like-minded enthusiasts. Just as his teachers expected, he loved the research and writing that went into every new episode. Trey's online presence started to grow, and he began to accumulate a dedicated following, which also led to him meeting more people and making friends with common interests. However, behind the facade of his YouTube persona, Trey's interests took a dark and disturbing turn. He delved into the morbid study of serial killers and mass shooters, even accumulating a series of his own weapons as his interests grew, which included at least 6 weapons and a substantial stockpile of ammunition. These weapons were not confined solely to his parents' home. He also stored them at his grandmother's residence in Hempstead. Trey's audience had no idea how different his real life was from his online persona, and not everything he pretended to be online was true in real life. And Trey also hid a part of himself from those in his life as well. Throughout his childhood, he had a disturbing interest in harming pets and setting fires. Not to get attention, but to watch them and learn from them. He would often sneak out as a young boy, finding hidden areas near his house to set fires or find animals to use as victims. While Trey's YouTube content remained seemingly unrelated to his darker interests, there was one video posted in February that hinted at something far more sinister and began to cause some worry in his audience, titled, "Mr. Anime is Planning Something." The video raised eyebrows from his audience due to the eerie nature and unsettling feelings in the video. In this cryptic video, Trey alluded to a future plan, never revealing the true nature of what lied ahead. and only giving out enough details to cause worry without telling anyone what exactly he was planning. Meanwhile, at home, Trey was more on edge with his family than ever. He was upset from spending so much time at home and not being able to move out on his own, and his parents wanted him to get out more, rather than spending so much time online. Trey's apparent unease with his family began to escalate into major arguments with his father, Lawton. The clashes between the two of them only got worse over time, creating an atmosphere of tension within the household, almost at all times. Trey's relationship with his father had deteriorated into a constant argument marked by high tension. As time passed, Trey's mental health only began to deteriorate further and continued to affect his relationship with his parents. He sought professional treatment for depression as a teenager, a condition that appeared to be taking an increasingly severe toll on his emotional well-being at the home and at school. Friends and acquaintances noticed troubling signs in his behavior, such as his withdrawal from social interactions and a noticeable decline in his online presence as Mr. Anime. The boy who was once expressive and outgoing, who loved his YouTube channel and his fans, seemed to be retreating into a more introverted space that others just couldn't understand. It was around this time that others in his town started to take note of how different he began to act, and some even feared something was going on. One chilling incident, recounted by a local barber named Robert Martinez, makes it clear there were signs of depression before anyone really tried to intervene. Robert remembered a visit from Trey, during which Trey requested a haircut that would make him appear as though he were in physical pain. A quite unusual request. Trey's unsettling request sent shivers down Martinez's spine as he tried to understand what could make a boy like him ask for something so eerie. Regardless, Robert agreed, but it never sat right with him. These early signs hinted at a darker and more ominous path that Trey was heading. His mental state had become fragile, and he was in desperate need of help and intervention. However, the clues to Trey's descent into darkness were there, hidden in plain sight. Yet no one could have predicted the shocking and tragic events that were about to unfold. Even though his parents did try to step in and get him the help he clearly needed, nothing worked as well as they hoped it would. On a fateful February day in 2012, Trey Sesler announced to his online audience that he would be taking a break from his YouTube videos and wouldn't be posting as often. In his YouTube video, he cited the need to, quote-unquote, reward himself after years of content creation and hard work behind the scenes. However, the true reason behind his abrupt hiatus was far more sinister and chilling than anyone could have ever imagined. Sadly, a week after this, Trey Sesler committed an act of violence that would forever change his life and send shockwaves through the community around him. But what no one knew, either his viewers or his family members, was that Trey was already planning an attack on the people closest to him. He was mad at the world, upset that he wasn't able to move out and be the prosperous adult he had always imagined. And he cultivated a plan to take revenge for this. He spent weeks thinking of the best possible way to carry out his plan, and when he finally decided how it should be done, he prepared himself to do it. March 20th, 2012 would go down in history as a day marred by unspeakable tragedy. On that fateful morning, Trey Sesler executed a horrifying sequence of events that would forever haunt the quiet suburban neighborhood in Waller, Texas. The gruesome saga began when Trey lured his mother, Rana, into the garage of their family home. In that dimly lit space, he carried out a cold-blooded act, fatally shooting her without warning. The garage, once a place for mundane household tasks and storage, became a scene of unspeakable violence. After this, Trey made his way into the family room, where his older brother, Mark, was presumably unaware of the horrors that had just unfolded only a few steps away. With a single gunshot to the head, Trey ended Mark's young life as well. The Sesler household, which had once echoed with laughter and family love, had now turned into a nightmarish crime scene. Trey's father, Lawton, had been awoken by the commotion within the house and heard the gunshot from upstairs. He ventured out of his room to investigate, likely never suspecting the horrors that awaited him from his own son. Trey's merciless rampage continued as he shot his own father, leaving Lawton grievously wounded and the house awash in bloodshed. After taking the lives of his family members, Trey descended further into madness, and he wasn't going to stop there. Trey's rampage extended to the family's own pets, showing a level of cruelty and brutality that defied comprehension, killing them all in his own home. What makes this tragedy all the more chilling is the revelation of Trey's initial plan. Before his descent into violence, Trey had meticulously plotted a massacre of horrifying proportions. He had embarked on a journey to a nearby high school, armed with the intent of carrying out a mass shooting during a pep rally, a heinous act that would have plunged the community into a nightmare they could have never imagined. Trey's intent was to unleash terror and violence upon innocent students, causing chaos and pandemonium in the halls of the high school. It was a plan born from the darkest corners of his mind, fueled by a disturbing fascination with mass shootings that was built up from his interest in firearms and brutality. However, even amid the darkness that had consumed him, Trey experienced a momentary pause, a wavering of his sinister resolve. He grappled with doubts, and in a fateful twist of fate, he decided to change his mind. He was thinking back on his plan, remembering all the lives he would have affected forever, and he actually decided to stop in his tracks. The lives of countless innocent students were spared that day, as Trey abandoned his plan and returned home, leaving a trail of unanswered questions in his place. On that ominous afternoon of March 20th, 2012, a concerned relative, unable to contact the Sesler family, made a fateful call to the police in Waller, Texas, hoping to have a welfare check conducted after not hearing from them for so long. The silence that enveloped the Sesler family had triggered alarms of concern, prompting the relative to seek help. Responding officers arrived at the Sesler residence later that afternoon, which from the outside appeared deceptively quiet. Little did they know that behind those closed doors, a horrific tragedy had occurred. The officers were about to step into a scene of unimaginable horror. The once predictable Sesler family home had been transformed into a horrible crime scene, marked by disarray, mess, and an overwhelming presence of violence. As the officers cautiously entered the house, they were greeted by a scene that would forever haunt their memories. At first, officers attempted to knock, hoping someone would answer the door, but when no one came, they made their way inside on their own. As they entered, they saw a distraught household marked by thrown items in distress. Knowing something had occurred, they ventured further inside and made their way into different rooms in the house, looking for the members of the family who might have been home. The master bedroom, a place that had once belonged to two loving parents, was now filled with the lifeless bodies of Lawton and Ronna Sesler, surrounded by pools of their own blood, quickly spreading across the room. The bathroom, a space where they once spent their mornings together, was marred by the lifeless form of their 26-year-old son, Mark. The entire house bore the scars of a gruesome act, with casings scattered, glass shattered, and the unmistakable traces of blood everywhere. It was a horrifying image that defied explanation and shook even the most experienced law enforcement officers who were taken aback by the scene in front of them. Amidst the chaos and tragedy, there was a haunting message scrawled on the wall inside the house. It was a message that left no room for doubt about the identity of the perpetrator and the nature of the horrors that unfolded. I love my mom, dad, and brother. Why did I do this? God forgive me, because I cannot forgive myself. As investigators combed through the puzzle that was the Sesler family home, they realized that someone pivotal was missing from the scene. Trey Sesler, the 22-year-old son, who had unmistakably committed the unspeakable acts of violence. The search for Trey Sesler and the desperate quest for answers to the inexplicable horrors he had unleashed had only just begun. In the wake of this tragedy, investigators faced a daunting task: unraveling the motives behind the horrifying murders and bringing Trey Sesler to justice. The first task of the police was to locate Trey Sesler, who had not only taken the lives of his family, but had also fled the scene with the family car. The authorities launched a statewide manhunt, deploying all available resources to track down the fugitive and prevent further harm, unsure of what he might go on to do next. They didn't have much time, and law enforcement agencies worked to piece together Trey's movements and gather any clues that could lead them to his whereabouts. The community, still reeling from the shock of the murders, was on edge, fearing that Trey might pose a threat to others as well. The investigation delved into the depths of Trey's online presence, seeking any digital clues that might shed light on his motivations and plans. Trey's YouTube channel, Lens Cat Productions, became a focal point of interest as investigators combed through his videos and interactions with his online audience. As the investigators went through Trey's online persona, they began to uncover a disturbing pattern. Behind the face of his online life, Trey had displayed a fascination with violence, particularly with serial killers and mass shootings, which he spoke about in length online. This chilling revelation raised troubling questions about the factors that had driven him to commit such heinous acts, and the investigators wondered if Trey had committed these acts due to some type of infatuation with shootings he had seen online. The next step in the investigation was to speak to people who knew Trey and try to gather information on why these acts of violence may have happened. However, interviews with friends and acquaintances of Trey Sesler further deepened the mystery. Those who had known him began to recount disturbing changes in his behavior in the months leading up to the tragedy. Trey's withdrawal from social interactions, his abrupt cessation of online activity, and his request for a haircut that made him appear as if he were in pain all pointed to a troubled individual in the midst of profound psychological crisis. But still, there was no clear answer to what had caused his downward spiral, only that he appeared to be going through a rough patch. As investigators delved deeper into Trey's life, they uncovered a troubling cache of evidence. Not only had he taken the lives of his family members, but he had also engaged in a spree of violence against animals, shooting at empty buildings, and setting fires in the past. The extent of his descent into darkness was becoming increasingly apparent. The enormity of the crimes and the unsettling revelations about Trey's intentions left the community in a state of shock and disbelief. As the investigation progressed, the urgent need for answers became all the more pressing, and the fear from the community was only growing. The search for Trey Sesler would now take law enforcement on a long journey into the darkest corners of the human mind. Thankfully, Trey was found and arrested not long after he took off. After the bodies of his parents and brother were found in the family home, a warrant was issued for his arrest. Not too long after, Trey was found and taken into custody by police. After the arrest, investigators began the grueling task in diving into the motive of why he committed the acts in the first place. Thankfully, Trey made a helpful yet horrifying confession that would help clear up some of the investigation. According to Trey, he killed his parents and brother as part of a calculated plan he had been thinking of for months. He explained that he had been planning on a Columbine-style attack at a nearby school, and he did not want his family to be ashamed of his actions. In his distorted logic, the murders were a means of preventing them from ever learning the truth about his intentions, which were to really cause disaster at the school he visited just after the attack on his family. In preparation for the school attack, Trey had taken a dark and chilling path. He had been shooting animals, which he believed would build his courage to shoot students. This shows how dark of a place his mind was, and how much he really did require help for his mental health. During his confession, Trey also displayed a disturbing level of detachment from the horrors that he had inflicted upon his family. He expressed a troubling belief that he did not want anyone to suffer, so he made sure that his family's deaths were swift and painless. What was even more chilling about his confession was his claim that he had used a high-powered rifle to take the lives of his family members, but had no intention of making them suffer. In his own words, "They were the first immediate human targets in my sight. If I was going to go out and do anything, they would have to go." After his family members lay lifeless in their home, Trey drove to Waller High School armed with an assault rifle and more than 100 rounds of ammunition. He parked in the school's parking lot, ready to unleash a massacre during a pep rally. Trey described his thoughts during that fateful moment, saying, "Right after I had killed the family, it was on my mind to do. And I'm like, here's my opportunity. Go ahead and get him." He envisioned the chaos and mayhem that he would ensue as students tried to flee the gunfire. He even contemplated committing the school shooting during Waller's High School's homecoming game, envisioning a scenario where he would open fire on the home fans, causing panic and pandemonium. It was a chilling glimpse into the mind of a young man teetering on the edge of unspeakable violence. In the end, Trey decided against carrying out the school shooting. He later explained to investigators, maybe what happened was just too real. His doubts had saved the lives of countless innocent students, but the horror he had inflicted upon his own family was already a grim reality. Trey's arrest marked a crucial turning point in the investigation. Later on, police recovered 6 weapons and ammunition in Trey's possession in various locations. He was charged with capital murder and held on a staggering $3 million bond. As the legal proceedings unfolded, the community struggled to come to terms with the shock and horror of the Sesler family tragedy. During Trey's confession, investigators noted moments of remorse and emotional distress. Waller County Sheriff Glenn Smith shared his observations, saying that he did cry and was at least feeling some sort of regret for what he had done. After confessing to the murders of his parents and brother, Trey revealed his other crimes committed. These included killing animals, shooting at empty buildings, and setting fires. Trey had even taken the lives of family pets in the past, but had told his family that they had been tragically run over. The extent of his deception continued to prove worse and worse. In August of 2012, Trey Sesler pleaded guilty to the murders of his parents and brother. He received an automatic sentence of life in prison, marking the end of a legal process that offered a semblance of closure to the surviving family members and the community. His defense attorney commented on the tragic case, saying, "This is a great tragedy, and there was no good outcome, so Trey felt comfortable with the sentence, and the survivors of the victims can now have closure. The community will be protected. That seemed like the best outcome." The case of Trey Sesler is a difficult story that highlights how even those who seem to have a loving family and a typical upbringing can experience mental health issues that can lead to tragedy. It's important to remember that mental health struggles can affect anyone, and early intervention can make a huge difference. Trey's actions had a far-reaching impact on his family, community, and everyone who learned about his story. It reminds us that even our loved ones can carry unseen turmoil. Although Trey was sentenced to life in prison, this doesn't fully restore the damage he caused to his victims and loved ones. Human behavior is complex, and mental health awareness is an ongoing challenge for society. The Sesler family tragedy reminds us of the work that remains to prevent similar horrors from occurring in the future.